Thanks for listening to Goddab Radio, a podcast for progressive thinking people. I'm Mad Dog Manser, and I'm here to bring you relevant and honest news and information that I find compelling. We cover politics, debunk conspiracy theories, report on cannabis, especially in Oregon, and feature guest interviews regularly. At Goddab Radio, we are ferociously progressive, fiercely skeptical, and forcefully scientific with a no-nonsense attitude. Today is Friday, and it's June 9th, and we have a great show planned with a great interview for you today. First, we will cover our conspiracy hypotheses segment this week, and we will discuss climate change deniers, and there are many, including our so-called president. There's a lot to cover, so it'll be a longer than usual segment today. In Carnival Barks, we will cover Trump and James Comey's testimony, and Trump's reaction, of course, which was predictable and pathetic. We will squeeze in a bit of cannabis news, too, from Oregon and the country. And we will finish the show with an interview with Josh Crosney of JCanna, the organization that puts on the Cannabis Science Conference. It's returning in August to the Portland Convention Center for its second year, and it should be a great show. It's quite different than most shows that you see, so it should be fun. As always, we want to thank our sponsors for helping make Goddab Radio possible, Honey Badger Sungrown and Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper, and a special thanks to Eric Sky of Portland for allowing us to use his amazing composition, One for the Green, to open and close our show. We really appreciate that. It's a great tune. So let's move on to our climate change discussion, exposing the lame arguments of climate change deniers. Global warming, also known as anthropogenic or human-caused global warming, is the rising average temperature of Earth's atmosphere and oceans and its related effects. Global warming denialism refers to the claims that global warming, A, isn't happening, B, isn't caused by humans, or C, isn't significant. It should not be confused with those that accept that anthropogenic global warming is a major threat, but dispute whether or not the government regulations put in place to combat it result in a desirable outcome. So to get right in it, let's just do a basic breakdown here. The phrase global warming by itself is often used to refer to the rapid rise of temperatures that the Earth has experienced since the start of the Industrial Revolution. In the past 100 years, Earth's average surface temperature increased by about 0.8 Celsius or 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit, with about 2/3 of the increase occurring over just the last 3 decades. As a result, anthropogenic global warming has recently become a major concern for humanity. Such concerns are supported worldwide by the wide majority of climatologists. Global warming is an increase in temperature in addition to the natural greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect interacts with the other planet-wide influences, such as the Milankovitch cycles, in order to produce long-term climate movements. Many gases contribute to the greenhouse effect, some of the most important being water vapor, methane, and carbon dioxide. Black carbon, i.e. soot, is third only to carbon dioxide and methane for its contribution to global warming. But it is the most effective at raising temperatures in the Arctic by reducing the albedo. It is, in its simplest form, the argument for anthropogenic climate change goes as follows. 1. The Earth's atmosphere keeps the planet much warmer than it would be without an atmosphere, obviously. 2. The main gases which contribute to this are carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor. Collectively, these are called greenhouse gases. 3. The ability of these gases to act as greenhouse gases can be shown in a laboratory. 4. The quality of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has increased sharply the quantity has increased sharply since the Industrial Revolution, and their concentration continues to do so. 5. The concentration of these gases has increased as a consequence of human activity. The temperature of Earth's atmosphere has been increasing and continues to increase. And last, the increase in global temperature correlates with the increase of greenhouse gases. Up to this point, virtually all scientists are in agreement, including those few global warming skeptics who understand the science and the data. Consequently, the skeptics need to somehow attack the final leg of that argument. The final leg is the increase in temperature has been caused by the increase in greenhouse gases. Of course, the logical consequence of this blindingly obvious conclusion is that we should reduce the quantity of greenhouse gases which we pump into the atmosphere so as to reduce global warming. Note that the statement, the increase in global temperature correlates with the increase of greenhouse gases, is only true on a very broad timescale. Greenhouse gases have increased roughly exponentially, but the temperature signal is far noisier and displays almost no correlation with greenhouse gas changes on an annual basis as expected. This is due to a variety of factors, from intrinsic noise in the climate system to the existence of other important forcing factors, most notably sulfate aerosols and global dimming, which are cooling factors. Also note that while water vapor is correctly listed as a greenhouse gas, the human emission of water vapor are not important in forcing climate change. Water vapor is best thought of as a response to temperature change rather than a cause, because its atmospheric lifetime is very short, about 10 days, unlike other gases such as CO2. What's the limit? While projections of the potential maximum temperature rise resulting from a doubling of CO2 have ranged from 2 degrees Celsius to 6 degrees Celsius, there's broad agreement that anything above 2 degrees Celsius will mean we are beyond recovery. The International Energy Agency suggests that the window to prevent this from occurring will close by 2020, a view shared by the OECD. So let's get cracking. CO2 emissions have been stabilizing, but methane emissions have risen dramatically during the last 10 years for unknown reasons. This undermines efforts to combat global warming, and there is a risk of uncontrollable runaway greenhouse effect. The scientific consensus was reached when the vast majority of scientists involved in a discipline broadly agree on the interpretation of the evidence pertaining to a specific scientific question. When this occurs, the case can be considered to have been demonstrated, and the burden of proof then falls on those who would dispute the consensus. The following national and international organizations are part of the consensus that global warming is a real phenomenon for which humans are responsible: the National Academy of Sciences, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NASA, the Goddard Institute of Space Studies, Environmental Protection Agency, the Royal Society of the UK, Canadian Meteorological and Oceanographic Society, UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and many, many more. Though some have taken non-committal stances, the vast majority of scientific bodies are convinced by the evidence. In addition, those pinko tree huggers at the Pentagon now rank global warming as a destabilizing force. Damn enviro-weenies. That's great. Despite the clarity of the facts, behavioral social science tells us that simply shoving global warming related scientific data into their face simply solidifies their existing beliefs. So let's run through some of the denial tactics that are used. Global warming deniers form a sliding scale of denial, which is outlined in this list. In general, these beliefs are designed to prevent action from being taken. Number one, not only deny global warming, but insist the opposite is occurring, right? Pushing the degree of denialism to the verge of the delusional. Number 2, simply deny global warming is happening and maintain that no action is necessary. So we don't have to change anything. Number 3, global warming is happening, but it's not caused by humanity. So we don't have to change anything. Number 4, global warming is happening, and it is in part caused by humanity, but most of it's caused by solar activity. So we don't have to change anything. Number 5, global warming is happening, and it's in part caused by humanity, but predicting future emission levels is equivalent to astrology. So we don't have to change anything. Global warming is caused by humanity, but it may be a good thing. So we don't have to change anything. Global warming is happening. It is caused by humanity, but it may be a bad thing. But insert emotional appeal and or false dichotomy about how doing anything about it would prevent the world's poor from improving their lives, so we don't have to do anything. Global warming is happening. It is caused by humanity. It is a bad thing, but there are still more serious crises that deserve higher priority. So we don't have to change anything. I mean, these are totally, I've heard all of these. Global warming is happening. It is caused by humanity. It's a bad thing. But China and India aren't doing anything. So we don't have to change anything. They're not doing it, so why should we? That's Trump's argument. If they're not going to be participating at the level we are, then why should we participate? Because it's just going to hurt our economy. It's just crazy. It goes on and on. And this is a great recording that I would play, but I would just suggest you go to rationalwiki.org, global warming denialism as the subject, and scroll down to the little YouTube video, misconceptions about global warming. It's a real great explanation of the denialist staircase, and I think you'd get a kick out of it. In effect, there's no real good argument against it. Some of the evidence for it, of course, the glacier retreat calculations that have been made is one of the most striking. Scientists have found DNA from ancient animals in an ice layer of Greenland, 1.2 miles beneath the surface of the ice. Since this study indicates that the ice layer survived the last interglacial, it has led to speculation that the ice caps may be able to also withstand global warming. However, the main author of the study dismissed suggestions that his team's data indicated that sea levels would not rise to predicted levels, saying that, quote, during the last interglacial, sea levels rose by 5 to 6 meters, but this must have come from other sources additional to the Greenland ice cap, such as Arctic ice. I would anticipate that as the Earth warms from man-made climate change, these sources would still contribute to a rise in sea levels. Sure, of course they would. Why would anybody deny that? I mean, that's just absurd. Nature generates more CO2 than humans. That's an argument against it, climate change, that it's nature's problem. Now, while it is true that natural sources of CO2 release represent a much higher percentage of CO2 output, natural carbon sinks that take up that CO2 balance it out. The amount of CO2 in the atmosphere has been relatively constant for hundreds of thousands of years due to output and input being equal over time. With humans, what humans are doing is burning and releasing natural carbon sinks, therefore releasing CO2 without creating additional carbon sinks. This means that net amount of CO2 is increasing over time due to the involvement, even though our total output is less than natural resources. That's maybe hard for some of the deniers to understand, but basically what we're doing is destroying the parts of the planet that absorb CO2, the carbon sinks, like the Amazon rainforest, okay? Because, trees, they breathe CO2 in and transpire out oxygen, and we're destroying the forests. They're one of the biggest reasons. Also, the oceans are another carbon sink, and we're destroying the oceans. That's the real crux of it. So when people say, well, one mountain exploding in the South Pacific from a volcanic explosion puts off more CO2 than man has in the last 100 years. That may be true, but that happens regularly. The Earth's biosphere is used to these events, but it's the existence of all the carbon sinks around the world that absorb the carbon that have disappeared that are causing the biggest issue. CO2 levels lag behind temperature increases. Of course, they do. There have been several major changes in the Earth's climate over its 4.5 billion year history. These have included spectacular events such as the snowball Earth, the periods of intense global warming. These periods of warming and cooling have a range of causes, mostly involving positive feedback loops, such as ice reflecting the sun back to space, causing more ice, reflecting more sun, and Milankovitch cycles, variations in Earth's orbit that have an effect on climate. The warming had similar positive feedback loops, which initially could have been caused by one of many factors, but eventually the warming increased the levels of CO2, which then caused even more warming. The fact that CO2 level increases have not been responsible for the start of 100% of all global warming events on the planet does not negate the fact that CO2 in the atmosphere does cause global warming. Indeed, given that CO2 does not lag the current warming, is one more piece of evidence demonstrating that established natural cycles are not the cause of the warming. It has been hotter in the past, so it's just cyclical, right? That's what a lot of people argue. While it is true there have been cyclical patterns of temperature changes throughout our planet's history, this does not mean that the causes are unknown, unknowable, or all the same. The application of the scientific method is great for working out cause and effect relationships. For those of you that don't believe in science, scientists have managed to link several warming and cooling cycles in the geologic history to specific causes. They have also shown that the modern warming is due to the added output of humans burning fossil fuels and destroying carbon sinks. Past natural climatic patterns that were destructive were associated with cool periods, while projected future catastrophe from AGW is going to be associated with warming. This makes man-made climate change much worse than naturally occurring climate change. The existence of previous warming cycles does not negate the seriousness of the current one. These previous cycles destroyed a great deal of life on the planet. And if similar effects occurred today, they would probably destroy all of human civilization, along with the humanity that created it. Actually, wouldn't that be a good thing for the Earth? Just being honest here, folks. Humans are doing no favors to the Earth. If we would just disappear, it would be a grand thing. And if I were God, that's what I would do. I would make all humans disappear. It would be the end of man on Earth. The end of days is what we need to see to save the Earth. For the atheists out there, they're cringing for me saying that, but it's true. We just need no humans on the Earth. Urban heat islands. This point contends that weather station readings are affected by their proximities to cities or urban heat islands, which is just stupid because, of course, we take temperature readings all over the world, not just in the cities. Plenty of temperature readings are taken out in the country, on the tops of mountains, all over the place. Anybody who makes this argument is truly a fucking idiot. I'm just saying. There's been no global warming since 1998. One of the most popular claims is made against climate science is that there has been no global warming since 1998, or even that there has been a pattern of global cooling since that year. Denialists who have made this argument include Tim Ball, Nigel Lawson, Fred Singer, Andrew Bolt, Christopher Monckton. The origins of this argument are unclear. Perhaps it might have originated in a column by Bob Carter, which appeared in the Daily Telegraph in 2006. This argument fails for several reasons. It only takes into account the satellite measurements, which doesn't measure directly the surface temperatures. Not only are these satellites run by known deniers, John Christie and Roy Spencer, but they are funded in part by Exxon. No conflict of interest there. By contrast, both scientifically accepted surface temperature data sets are only funded by government sources, and they show that the warming not only continues, but is accelerating in lock and step with the CO2 emissions. Most importantly, this is one of the finest examples of cherry-picking science deniers only look at the data sets that match the conclusions they want to see. Classic climate denialism demands that average global temperature measurements must be taken from the peak of the hottest year and measured to the point through the coolest year. If the denialists ever picked years either side of 1998 as their start point, the argument would sink faster than the Titanic. This is because globally, 1998 was a record-breaking hot year due to a very strong El Nino. Additionally, other strong El Nino in 2015-16 caused temperatures to soar far past those seen in 1998. So they now have to ignore that time has been passing since 2014, as even their beloved RSS shows a record hot year. Yeah. The Antarctic sea ice increasing, which is just not true. The Ross Ice Shelf melted a couple of years ago and disappeared. That was a huge chunk of ice like the size of Rhode Island or bigger. It was enormous, and it just disappeared. So anyway, I suggest you check out Rational Wiki. I think they've got a real extensive breakdown. It's really long. They've got a lot of links, and they have a whole lot of course, references that you can go to get the facts. So don't be a sucker. Don't be a climate change denier. Don't be an idiot. Listen to the scientists. This is not something that is debatable anymore. As Obama put it recently, he was speaking to a group of people after Trump's comments and his pullout from the Paris Climate Accord. If you went to see a doctor, and then he said, no, if you went to see 100 doctors, and 99 of them told you that you had this disease, but one said you didn't, what are you going to do? Listen to the one doctor? It's just absurd. It's beyond absurd. It's stupid. And if you believe in climate, if you're a climate change denier, more than likely you're a Trump supporter or potentially a Trump supporter. And that's a really sad thing, because people who support Donald Trump and people who support climate change denialism are both ignorant and suckers. You can't just live on the internet. You can't believe the few things that a few people tell you that fit your point of view. You have to look beyond that. So screw you, denialists of climate change. You're all a bunch of flakes. And if you want to debate it with me, look me up on Facebook, and we'll be happy to debate it with you. Goddab Radio. We've got a Facebook page. And I'll be happy to take you apart piece by piece and make you look the fool if you're really going to argue that with me, because you have no basis to make that argument. That's fact. And I guess that was a nice little segue. It brings us right into what everybody may be waiting for. I don't know. It's going to be a little shorter this week, but it's time. It's time for Carnival Barks, our weekly Trump roundup where we highlight recent alternative facts from the so-called president, a segment where we point out the absurdities, lies, and blunders coming from Trump and his inept administration. This week, we talk about James Comey's testimony. What else? On Thursday, former FBI Director James Comey testified to the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee about his interactions with our fake President Trump. And it was a bombshell that Trump, of course, is denying. What interacted was a 2-hour and 20-minute testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee. And what did they talk about? Wow. Well, 9 different meetings in 4 months that Director Comey had with so-called President Trump in the first 4 months of the administration, yet he only had 2 meetings with President Obama over the course of 3 years. It's absolutely incredible. He made the contemporaneous memos to protect his ass, admittedly, because he could not trust Trump and expected that he would lie about their conversations. Over the course of the testimony, Comey directly said Trump lied twice, and 3 other times insinuated that Trump lied. Just unbelievable that he came out and testified to Congress and called the so-called president a liar, straight up. He was obviously upset and a little peeved that the president had attacked him personally, but more importantly, according to Comey, that the president had attacked the FBI. And the FBI is an institution, which really got him going. Turns out he only exposed the existence of his contemporaneous memos because Trump tweeted about the possibility of tapes existing that would show the truth about their conversations. Here is what Comey said about the memos and the tapes.
I was so stunned by the conversation that I just took it in. And the only thing I could think to say, because I was playing in my mind, because I was going to remember every word he said, I was playing in my mind, what should my response be? And that's why I very carefully chose the words. And look, I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there are tapes. I remember saying, I agree he's a good guy, as a way of saying I'm not agreeing with what you just asked me to do. Again, maybe other people would be stronger in that circumstance, but that's how I conducted myself. I hope I'll never have another opportunity. Maybe if I did it again, I would do it better. And then the conversation turned to about, so what should we do with this information? And that was a struggle for us because we are the leaders of the FBI, so it's been reported to us in that I heard it, and now I've shared it with the leaders of the FBI. Our conversation was, should we share this with any senior officials at the Justice Department? Our absolute primary concern was, we can't infect the investigative team. We don't want the agents and analysts working on this to know the President of the United States has asked, and when it comes from the President, I took it as a direction, to get rid of this investigation because we're not going to follow that request. And so we decided we got to keep it away from our troops. But is there anybody else we ought to tell at the Justice Department? And as I laid out in my statement, we considered whether to tell the Attorney General, decided that didn't make sense because we believed, rightly, that he was shortly going to recuse. There were no other Senate-confirmed leaders in the Justice Department at that point. The Deputy Attorney General was Mr. Bente, who was acting and going to be shortly in that seat. And we decided the best move would be to hold it, keep it in a box, document it, as we had already done, and then this investigation is going to go on, figure out what to do with it down the road. Is there a way to corroborate this? Our view at the time was, look, it's your word against the President's. There's no way to corroborate this. My view of that changed when the prospect of tapes was raised, but that's how we thought about it then.
The main quote from this testimony, Lordy, I hope there are tapes. Yeah, you think? I think everybody sure wishes there were. And of course we know there are not. No tapes. Don't exist. My friend Miguel Mulholland, he posted he posted a comment that that he thought that the Comey tapes were being stored in the same place as the Obama intelligence surveillance order and Obama's birth certificate. That's about how legitimate that that Trump is. It's absolutely absurd, folks. It was quite amazing. I suggest you check it out, watch the testimony or synopsises of it if you can, and learn from this buffoon. All right, so enough of the Trump works. Just ridiculous. Let's get a word from our sponsors. At Honey Badger Sungrown, they care about providing natural products. There are no chemical pesticides and no chemical fertilizers used in their cannabis grow, and they are motivated with a passion for natural cultivation. They take pride in sustainable and environmentally friendly cultivation and produce their product on the beautiful Willamette Valley floor. Honey Badger Cannabis is available at a number of dispensaries, including Grow High Station in Portland and Stash Cannabis Company in Beaverton. Ask for Honey Badger Sungrown products at your dispensary. You can visit them online at www.honeybadgersungrown.com. Are you interested in cannabis? Do you work in the industry? If so, you should pick up a copy of the Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper, available at over 380 locations across Oregon. We cover cannabis news and provide solid information on cannabis in Oregon and nationwide. Find us online at www.occnewspaper.com or pick up a copy at one of our distribution locations. We offer an interactive map on our website for your convenience. Oregon Cannabis Connection, connecting the cannabis community in Oregon since 2010. And now for some cannabis news. From Oregon, legislation is pending to permit social use. Looks like this bill is going to pass through the houses in Oregon. And this is from Weed News from Johnny Green. I have made it very clear that I want to see Oregon allow social cannabis consumption, and specifically at a co-op arcade that I can consume cannabis at. Allowing social consumption would do wonders for Oregon's cannabis industry and would help limit selective enforcement of public cannabis consumption laws in Oregon. NORML put out an action alert urging people to contact their Oregon legislators. Below is more information. Please step up and do your part. And this would still apply. So if you're in Oregon, contact your representative or senator and let them know they want them to support Senate Bill 307, which would create a regulatory framework that would allow adults to consume marijuana in a regulated social setting. The bill is modest and requires approval from local government officials while limiting consumption to outdoor locations. Importantly, it provides a safe, regulated alternative to parks, sidewalks, and alleys where consumers may end up, even when prohibited by law. One of the best arguments for allowing social use clubs is to allow people who do not have a place to medicate at their home. As many people in the industry understand, there is no protections for people who live in housing or in a rental. When your landlord says you cannot consume cannabis on your property and you want to obey those rules, then you need to find a different place to go to do it. And if you don't have a friend nearby, social cannabis clubs are one of the best ways to provide access for people who need to medicate and that they can't do at home. Another example is people who travel to Oregon from out of state and they're here on a vacation or traveling and they may be staying in a motel room. You don't want to use the cannabis in the motel room, obviously, because you're not supposed to smoke in a motel room. And they will charge you for doing that. It happens frequently. So allowing a social consumption area outside of the hotel or motel is best. I mean, it just makes total sense. We all know that it's safer than alcohol. We all know that driving while you're stoned, you're much safer than if you've been drinking. In fact, you're safer driving while stoned than if you're a new user to cigarettes and you get a cigarette buzz. I'm just saying. A lot of studies have shown that. So they need to not worry so much about the problems that might occur from driving while smoking cannabis, for sure. So Way to go, Oregon. I hope that passes through, should pass through, and provide social consumption places, which already exist in Oregon, legal background and protections. And Colorado, finally, PTSD patients will soon get access to state's medical marijuana program. This also from Johnny Green over at Weed News. I received the following legislative alert out of Colorado today. Governor John Hickenlooper yesterday signed Senate Bill 17 into law, adding post-traumatic stress disorder to the list of qualifying medical conditions. The new addition makes Colorado the 25th state, in addition to Washington, D.C., to allow patients to treat PTSD or its symptoms with medical cannabis. While Colorado is often at the forefront of cannabis policy, it was one of only a handful of states that did not include access for those diagnosed with PTSD. Repeated efforts to include PTSD through requests to the Colorado Board of Health had not been successful, so a legislative fix is welcome relief. Access to the medical program is important, even though marijuana is legal for adults 21 and over. It can mean essential protections for veterans receiving care at VA facilities that allow participation in medical programs, in addition to providing access to a wider range of more medicinally focused varieties of cannabis, including those with larger amounts of CBD. According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, PTSD will affect between 7 and 8 out of every 100 Americans at some point in their lives. In Colorado, that's over 380,000 people, nearly the population of Colorado Springs. Many find relief using medical marijuana throughout the U.S., and medical cannabis programs should not leave behind these patients. Finally, in Colorado, they won't be. That's great news. Great Colorado, and I can't believe that you didn't have PTSD on your list. That was news to me. So that's great news in the end. And then California, they passed a law to protect the lawful marijuana activity that's going to be going on in the state now that they've passed adult use bill last November. Last night, and that would have been on June 1st, the California State Assembly passed legislation that would prohibit state and local agencies from using resources to assist federal law enforcement authorities with marijuana enforcement against people in compliance with California state law. The successful Assembly floor vote means the bill has cleared its first House before today's deadline and now heads to the State Senate, to be heard by the Senate Public Safety Committee. In 2016, the voters of California overwhelmingly approved Proposition 64, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, which provided that adults 21 and over could purchase and possess a limited amount of marijuana for personal use. However, President Donald Trump and the Attorney General Jeff Sessions have hinted at a forthcoming crackdown on the recreational use of marijuana in the states that have approved adult personal use. President Trump has made his intentions loud and clear in recent weeks when he turned rhetoric into policy with his signing statement to the Consolidated Appropriations Act, declaring the federal government intention to prosecute and punish states and their residents for using medical marijuana, never mind its recreational use. Additionally, Attorney General Sessions has doubled down by declaring the war on drugs. Redeclaring the war on drugs. He called for reinstating mandatory minimum sentences, of course, and prosecuting all drug-related charges to the fullest extent of the law. He's such a little creepy fucker. Jeff Sessions, I just can't explain. Makes me want to barf, that little creepy little freaking gnome. Oh. These policies roll back the gains California has made in fighting mass incarceration and reducing the number of individuals in our overcrowded prisons and jails. So luckily, California has made the move to protect as best they can the people of the state of California from federal prosecution for marijuana. They can't stop some state sheriff that wants to go ahead and pursue the federal laws and try to throw down on people, unfortunately, but they can deny them money to do it. So that's what they've done. Kudos to the California Assembly for doing this. I think it's a great move. Awesome move, if you ask me. All right. Enough for the brief cannabis news for tonight. Now we've got even more cannabis news by bringing you our conversation with Josh Crosney of the Cannabis Science Conference. So here's that. All right, everybody. We want to welcome to our show Josh Crosney, who is the founder and president of the Cannabis Science Conference. It's going to be coming to Portland in August. Thanks for joining us today, Josh.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on today. Great to be with you guys.
Hey, it's wonderful having you. Now, you guys have been doing this conference for a couple of years now. Tell us a little bit about why you do the conference and how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, so my background is in analytical science, staffing, and recruiting. So I used to find and place people in that industry. So either environmental, food safety, or pharma labs, or companies like instrument manufacturers, extraction, stuff like that. And then I just kind of saw a need for the advancement in cannabis science, and specifically with the testing and the need for standardization and testing. And that kind of led me to get more interested in the cannabis industry and kind of start figuring out where I might fit. And then we started our nonprofit organization, JCanna, which is devoted to the advancement of cannabis science. And that is what we do. We host the Cannabis Science Conference. And this will be our second annual Cannabis Science Conference. The first one that we did was actually in October, and we did that at the Red Lion on the River. And we had just about 800 people and 85 sponsor and exhibitor booths. So if you guys know the Red Lion, it's a great facility, but with numbers like that, you're kind of a little cramped. So we knew after that it was time to expand to a larger location. So we're really excited about our expansion this year to the Oregon Convention Center.
Right, and the Oregon Convention Center, that's a really nice location. It's right on the MAX lines. I mean, it's really easy to get to for visitors, and I'm really excited about it. I think, the 85 exhibitors at the Red Lion, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty tight. So we had the whole grand ballroom on the main level was our exhibit hall, and that was just packed with 10 by 10, some 10 by 20 exhibitor and sponsor booths. And then the lower level, the entire ballroom down there was our general session room that was set for about 450 people. And that was basically packed the entire time, which was kind of a great thing to see. I think a lot of shows, and I know that it's important to get a lot of content out at one time, but sometimes there's almost too many tracks going on at once. So we figured we'll start with one our first year. This year we're expanding, and we're going to be doing two parallel tracks. One that will focus more on the analytical science topics, like extractions and testing for quality control and things like research in those fields, as well as hear from people that are running and operate laboratories. And then parallel to that, we'll have our medical cannabis track, which will be more about medical cannabis topics. You'll hear from medical cannabis doctors, cannabis nurses. You'll hear things like different routes of administration and things like that. So one thing that's really exciting in our medical track this year, we're doing an international medical cannabis updates panel. So we're going to have a representative from Australia, from Israel, from Canada, from Colombia, and from Puerto Rico, and they're all going to kind of sit on a panel and talk about what's going on, where they're at in the world with medical cannabis.
Wow, that's really great. So that's the focus of your conference obviously is on science, and you've broken it into two, sort of an analytical side and then the medical science side, which is really great. The international panel sounds really intriguing to me. There's so much going on now, and so much more outside of the United States, which is kind of a shame, that's really happening. So that's really great.
Oh, absolutely. And the gentleman from Australia that's going to sit on that panel, his name is Paul Maver, and he's a pharmacist based in Australia in Perth. And him and his wife actually were the first people just a couple weeks ago to import medical cannabis oil into Australia. So that was really exciting news, and they got a really lot of attention for that. And a lot of interviews and media press stuff. And then Dr. Deddy Neary, who is also one of our keynote speakers, will also sit on that panel. And he is the lead cannabis researcher for cancer at the Technion Institute in Israel. So he is a great, great individual. He's very, very well-versed in all things cannabis, science, and medicine and research. So we're really excited to have him back again this year as a keynote speaker.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. He's going to be one of the keynotes then. And, of course, Israel is leading the way in medical cannabis studies right now, really. above every other country in my honest opinion.
Oh, absolutely. And there was just an announcement that came out, I think it's the Yahoo Finance as well as Forbes, that Technion Institute with Dr. Debbie Neary is partnering with groups in the States here. One of the groups is Cannakids, which is ran by a lady named Tracy Ryan that's based in California. And she has already partnered with Cure Pharmaceuticals, and they're going to be doing clinical trials and research here in the U.S. So that just came out last week. So that was really exciting news to hear. Some more research coming in our neck of the woods over here in the States.
Right, more the merrier for sure. I know Colorado, it should be lauded for their support of research so recently, and even California has already got plans to start doing research with the tax money that they are just about to start be collecting from their recreational cannabis. So Oregon.
Oh, absolutely, and we're really excited to see that development and growth of science in the States, and we really we hope that we have been able to play, if anything, maybe just a small part in helping to advance these conversations and connect some of these people from all over the world.
Well, I'm kind of excited that you're having the conference here in Oregon, and I hope you extend some free admittance to some of the folks in Oregon, maybe at the Department of Health Services here and stuff that run our medical program to attend, so they might be able to learn something a little more than their narrow-mindedness. So, I mean, because we have run into some frustrations with some of the folks at the Oregon Health Authority, and it's not really the administrators as much as I think the medical side that cause issues. And I'd love to have some of their heads of their departments get to this show.
Oh, absolutely. That would be great, and we would love that. And we do a lot of scholarships for patients, for veterans. We're also working on a minority scholarship program where we're working with a couple different groups to give free admission to some people. And one of the great things about our conference is it really is great educational, important content. But unlike a lot of shows, we set our price for the full access. So for both days of the conference, you can hear all the agenda. You can be in the exhibit hall, and you get to go to 2 mixers in the evening, both nights, for $199. For a lot of shows that have the level of content that we provide, and they give you 2 parties and things like that, you're paying $600, $700, $800 or more sometimes. So we really like to keep it affordable for people. So not just the advanced experts in science or medicine, but also for interested novices that just want to come and learn more about why something that they love and they use either as medicine or recreationally helps them deal with life the way that it does. Right.
Now so the conference is 2 days, and the $199 admission gets you into everything. It's really all inclusive. That's amazing. When are the mixers happening? Is that like Friday and Saturday night, or when is that going on?
So the mixers would be on the evening of the 29th and the 30th, and they would be after all the sessions are done. So on the 29th, the mixer will start at 6 p.m. and it'll run from 6 to 8. And that'll be sponsored by Shimatsu Scientific Instruments. They're also our title sponsor. And then on the 30th, that mixture will actually start a little bit earlier at 4 p.m. because, the last day of a show, you'd like to end the agenda a little bit earlier than, 6 p.m. And then that way it leaves a little bit of time for a mixer. So that will be sponsored by 908 Devices, and that they are also a platinum sponsor of our show. So that will be, hors d'oeuvres and alcoholic beverages that'll be provided by those sponsors.
Okay, excellent. That's really great. So there's an opportunity for people to connect up with folks that they saw and maybe neglected to follow up with at the show, hopefully, as well as meet other people they didn't have a chance of meeting yet, I guess. So that's really good.
Absolutely. And I think, one thing that sets us apart from some other shows is that some shows are either all about the business and some shows are all about the medical or the scientific content. So we try to bring those together a little bit with the robust exhibit floor and the really powerful agenda. So this year we're expected to have about 115 sponsors and exhibitors because we have a 60,000 square foot exhibit hall, and we're also going to have technical poster presentations throughout the exhibit hall. So some great people that are going to be putting some great information out in poster form, and they will, stand by their posters and explain the content to people that are kind of just passing through the exhibit floor. So we're excited to add that addition this year.
That's excellent. Now, you were taking submissions of scientific presentations there. Did you get some pretty good submissions for this for the show?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we had over 300 submissions to speak at the conference this year, so that was definitely a process to go through and review all those submissions. And really, most of them were phenomenal. So it was really difficult, really trying to narrow down to like what we felt would be the best fit for what we were doing. But I think we ended up with a really great list of speakers. I mentioned Dr. Daddy is one of our keynote speakers. We also have Professor Jack Kenyon, that's a PhD and a genius in mass spectrometry and everything to do with chromatography. So he's one of our other scientific keynote speakers. And then our two medical keynote speakers will be Dr. Umadan Balan, who's a medical cannabis therapeutic specialist out of Boston, Massachusetts, is going to be one of our keynotes. And then Dr. Stu Sicily will be one of our other medical keynote speakers, who is a very well-known and very well-respected doctor, cannabis center doctor, who actually has a Schedule I research license, and she's been studying the effects of cannabis and PTSD veterans. So I think people will be really good to hear from both Dr. Stu and Dr. Uma. Yeah,
those are great to be lined up. I know Dr. Sicily especially has been in the news a lot lately with her PTSD research, and had been working with Johns Hopkins. I know that ended up falling to the wayside, but they're still pressing ahead on their research, and I think it's critical that we get that research done, especially on PTSD, which to me is one of the more evident, obvious uses for marijuana.
Oh, absolutely. But going to that, like, I think it's also a condition that, you really want to have the science behind what kind of cannabis you're recommending to the people that are suffering from this. Because some of the things that cannabis can treat, it can also cause. So like dry mouth, panic, if you have severe PTSD, like, maybe a super high sativa strain or whatever, that cannabinoid profile might not be best for you. It could exacerbate anxiety and things like that. For, the opposite to someone who has an opposite condition where they might need that kind of, effect to get them where they want to be. Right.
No, very much so. I love it. So now on the analytical side, you've got some presenters happening there. What are some of the focuses that you have? Will you be one of the things in Oregon, even though you're not really specific to Oregon, your conference, it's really a worldwide concept. But since we're here and it is Oregon, and one of the big things in cannabis right now is pesticide testing, are you going to be hitting on that at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have a few really great presentations regarding pesticides and other contaminant testing. One of our speakers, her name is Julie Kowalski, and she's a PhD. And she's not right in Portland. She's the head of the lab in Spokane, Washington, Trace Analytics, but still, Pacific Northwest, so she's still kind of in the region. But yeah, we have some really, really great people from some really great labs that'll be talking about some of the challenges that they face in their lab. We'll have some great presentations on the need for standardization in cannabis testing, so that we won't continue to see you take one product to 6 different labs and you get 6 dramatically different results. So it's kind of a place where these laboratories are all working from the same book, essentially, and they're doing the same processes, so that you can kind of duplicate these results a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big deal, especially in Oregon, obviously, and trying to determine what is a standard test for the different cannabinoid levels, and because there's so many different variables going into doing the test and using this equipment.
And if you use a different type of instrumentation than someone else is using, you're bound to get different results. I mean, we don't even have the simplest, really, statewide, nationwide, global testing standards. So, I mean, you look at other industries, like even water and wastewater testing has standard methods that are used. So, regardless of what lab is testing for water or, wastewater, they're doing the same process. So, and, it's hard because a lot of these labs, they look at it as kind of a competitive edge, that like maybe they have a better way and they're doing it this way. And I think that in the future, the competitive edge is going to have to be, your work, what you guys do, like your turnaround time, like things like that. Instead of like, oh, this is our proprietary process and, we do it the best. But the thing is, like, the independent labs, like, one lab is not going to hold up against, the entire, government once, hopefully at some point. We want this to be, regulated and legalized throughout the country. I think that's kind of what the goal is for this, and even on a global level. So once that happens, if we're not prepared and we don't have things together, they can kind of overregulate. So the last thing we need is overregulation. So I think the sooner we can kind of get on the same page with each other and show that, we have this down and, this is a, standardized testing market, and even with extractions, and that's why when you talk about this as a medicine and you talk about immunocompromised patients, it's very important that their medicine is contaminant free, and if something like that is missed in a testing process and then it's extracted, which most severely ill medical patients are using, is some kind of extracted product. That's a whole other conversation. Is the contaminant being extracted to its most purest form, and it's not just the cannabinoids having that happen. So it's a lot, and I feel like we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours just about different things, about, testing, extractions, science, and even growing science. But, hopefully, if this is interesting to the listeners, they'll come and check out the show. And, I am by no means the top subject expert in any of this stuff. My goal is to bring the leading experts all over the world together to share their valuable information with each other.
Right. Well, that's the key here. We're not relying on you to be the expert, but we love the fact that you're gathering them all together in one place, and especially that they're going to be in Portland. That's even better. So we love that. Absolutely. So let's run through some of the specifics for people on this, and let's give them the dates and all the poop on it, so they know where to go and where to get the information.
Yeah, so it's the 2017 Cannabis Science Conference. It's going to be held at the Oregon Convention Center. The dates are going to be August 28th through 30th. The main conference will be on the 29th and 30th. On the 28th, we'll be doing our pre-conference workshops. We'll be hosting the second annual Canna Boot Camp at Palace Farms Airport location. And that is a full-day interactive hands-on workshop that's geared towards cultivation, extraction, testing, sample preparation, processing, and manufacturing.
Nice.
So that's kind of a whole day crash course on that. And we have our top level sponsors. They come in and they set up their instrumentation, and they really do like hands-on interactive demos, and it's done in like tours throughout the facility. So that was really great last year. We hosted about 80 people for that, and we bumped up the number a little bit this year, but that is falling out really quickly. And then parallel to that, on the same day, on the 28th, we're going to be having a Cannabis Nurses Network pre-conference workshop that's going to be called Making Endocannabinoid Connections. So this will be more of a medical focus, and it'll be some of the top cannabis nurses like Nurse Heather Manis and Nurse Joel B. and Nurse Marcy Cooper, who are top cannabis nurses in the industry, and they're really, really educated in the endocannabinoid system and other things. So that'll be a really fun interactive workshop as well. Just to note, those are both full-day events. So it's kind of like if you're going to do the pre-conference, you have to pick one of those. But those tickets, as well as the conference tickets, can be found at www.cannabisscienceconference.com.
Okay, excellent. And wow, so you've got a whole third day really of stuff happening on the 28th before the conference. So that's really excellent.
Yep, but that's just, like I said, separate ticket sales for those. And like I said, it's $199 for full access. It's $40 for exhibit only for the 29th and 30th. So if you just want to come and walk the exhibit floor and talk to the companies, the sponsors and supporters and the media companies, that's just $40 for that pass. And then your listeners, if they'd like to use promo code JCANNA25, which is EANNA 25 at checkout, that'll get them 25% off conference registration. And that doesn't apply to the boot camp pass, just either full access or the exhibit only pass. Okay.
And the boot camp pass for the Friday events is how much?
That one is a little bit more because that is a training workshop that's really geared towards laboratory professionals and stuff like that. So that one is $399, and then the Cannabis Nurses Network course is $349.
Okay. So, but those are really more hands-on and a lot more close interaction with these experts than they would get at the seminar-style presentations.
Yes, absolutely. So it's more of like training workshops where you'll really read and you'll feel like you gained a lot of information. So the one at the convention center, the Nurses Network course, that's really geared towards people that are interested in the medical field, so nurses, doctors, healthcare professionals, holistic coaches, stuff like that, as well as interested novices that are interested in learning more about the endocannabinoid system and different things that go along with that. And then I would say the boot camp is kind of geared a little bit more towards laboratory professionals. So, a lot of times you have these analytical chemistry experts that know this instrumentation like the back of their hand, but if they've not been introduced to the cannabis industry yet, they don't know the applications that are being used with cannabis. So it's a great way for them to come and kind of see like the instruments that they've known all this time, but what's actually being done with it in cannabis. So I think that's really interesting, and I think people would enjoy that. And so we would love to have your listeners, and we're excited to be working with you guys. I know that you guys will be there with OCC, and
Yeah, we will. We're excited to be participating, and it's going to be fun. I think one of the better shows around. I think it's just it's going to be real intriguing. I'm really interested in both the medical science side and the analytical extraction processing side. I think both are interesting. It's going to be hard for me to split up my time. I don't know which of those events I'd probably go to. Probably the medical one at this point. I've got a lot of interest in that right away. So
sure,
we'll see. We'll see what I decide.
Well, I think that's a good problem to have, right? Like it's like such great content, you don't know which way to turn.
Exactly. No, exactly it, man. I totally agree. So, all right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for being on our podcast on Goddab Radio, and we're excited to have you, and we're excited to go to your conference, and that's August 28th for the pre-conference stuff, and 29th and 30th coming up just a couple months away.
Absolutely, and it was really great joining you guys today, and I'm excited to see you guys in Portland at the Cannabis Science Conference. And if anyone is interested, we do still have very limited exhibitor space left, so if anyone's interested in exhibiting, you can reach out to me at josh@jcanna.com.
Excellent, perfect. That'll work great. All right, Josh, thanks a lot. We got a lot of stuff going on in Oregon this year, and we're glad that your science conference is part of all the events.
Absolutely.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Josh Krosny with the Cannabis Science Conference coming August 29th. Actually, 28th is when the boot camps will be happening on Friday. And the conference is on the 29th and the 30th. CannabisScienceConference.com. Check that out for more information. And thanks for listening to our show today. I appreciate it. We try to bring you some compelling and good information and news every week, and we hope you've been enjoying our show. It's our 21st episode, and we're real excited to continue bringing you Goddab Radio. I am your host, Keith Manser. Join us again next week, and we will have another great show for you. And you can reach us, of course, on all the typical places that you find podcasts. You can find us on iTunes, TuneIn, Amazon, Google Music Play, and iHeartRadio even YouTube. We have all of our shows on YouTube as well. No video, but you do have the audio. So check us out there, or, of course, you can go to goddabradio.com and subscribe, and then every Friday you'll get our podcast delivered to your inbox. 3 o'clock Fridays, Goddab Radio. Thanks for listening, folks.